Call to order the council meeting of March 6th. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, could you call the roll for City Council Housing Authority? Successor Agency Parking and the Parking Authority and Finance Authority.
A quorum is present for City Council, Successor Agency Housing Authority, Finance Authority, and Parking Authority.
We have a special commendation for TEC. Community Service is It is with great pride and pleasure that the mayor and city council members recognize TEC for outstanding community service. Your commitment and dedication to provide program management and construction management on private and public works projects makes our communities vibrant and operationally efficient. We commend you on your commitment to giving back to the community at large. Your sincere dedication to the Inglewood community is greatly appreciated. Now, therefore, be it known that the mayor and council members of the city of Inglewood, California, do hereby recognize TEC for its exceptional service. May you have continued success in all of your future endeavors. Presented the 6th day of March, 2018. Guys, they're responsible for all that local hiring that's going on the construction project. Any person who wishes to address City Council on any item on the City Council Successor Agency Housing Authority on today's agenda, this is only for agenda items, may do so at this time. Hearing no comment. Item 1, CSA 1 and H1.
Warrant register.
Move allow payments.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Council, City Council, Successor Agency, and Housing Authority members. Dotson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales. Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Chairman Buds.
Aye. Consent calendar, items 2 through 5.
So moved. Second.
Council members Dotson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye. 01,
Staff report recommending adoption of an ordinance number 1805, reauthorizing the public educational and governmental fee on the state video franchise operating within the city of Inglewood.
Motion to waive further reading.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Council members Dotson.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye.
Adopt the ordinance.
Second.
Madam Clerk.
Council members Dotson.
Aye.
Aye.
Morales.
Aye.
Franklin.
Aye.
Mayor Buds.
Aye. A1. CM1.
Portsmouth City Manager's Office.
CC1.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a report. There's a new bill that's being proposed by the Senate, by Senator Portiano. And this bill is SB 25, and it will make a fundamental change in the order of the officers and how it will appear on the voter's ballot. Current ballot order puts local officials and initiatives last. Voter fatigue is a real problem, especially when it comes to the important and complex local initiatives. If this bill is passed, the ballot order for local officials and issues will appear first. And lastly, I just want to remind everybody that for the June 5th election, registration is open now, but will close on May 21st, so we have quite a bit of time. Thank you.
Thank you. CT1.
Yeah, just to let the council and the public know, I did purchase a CD today. $250,000 is a 5-year CD, and it's FDIC insured up to $250,000. And again, the coupon is 2.80, and it was purchased from Higgins Capital. That concludes my comments. Oh, also, I'd like you also to close the council meeting in memory of a neighbor who passed away last week, Marlene Bailey.
Right. We have a presentation regarding the Inglewood Transit Corridor. Lisa Trifoletti is going to make that presentation. Welcome, Ms. Trifoletti.
Good afternoon, Council. We really appreciate your time today, and I'd like to just introduce myself. Lisa Trifoletti, consultant to the city, working on a comprehensive transportation plan, looking at multiple strategies, including Inglewood Transit Connector. And we have a number of team members here. If some of the members of the team on the Pacifica would please stand up so you could see who's here to support. And I'd like to also thank Lewis Atwell, who's been a great leader in helping us through this planning effort. So the goal today is to talk about the opportunity to synergize the city's ongoing transformation with economic development and investment and create an effective, efficient transportation system that connects the major venues to the Crenshaw and Green Line. We are looking to optimize opportunities for the city, the community, and all of the stakeholders. So we're going to give you a background on what we've been doing to date, kind of talk about the challenges that the city faces, talk about how Metro did a preliminary analysis to help us solve this problem, share with you the planning work to date, the steps we're going to take, and then, you know, we plan to be back here to give you ongoing briefings. So the city's challenge is one where you are already in an amazing process where you're transforming this city into a world-class city, and we are here to help facilitate that through a transportation system. We're looking at how we can link rail to the major destinations. We can make robust multimodal connections and complete the transit network to the activity centers. Well, with that, we also want to minimize traffic congestion. We know that that is very important, also to improve public safety and reduce unwarranted traffic through residential neighborhoods. So protecting the residential community is also paramount. We want to enhance active transportation corridors for pedestrians and bikes and other modes where it's appropriate. And then we also want to integrate state-of-the-art technologies such as intelligent transportation systems and smart app-driven technologies into the plan. So we are doing a comprehensive study. We're looking at a long-range mobility plan, looking at what the world looks like in 2040, and that would be something that we could work closely with the partners like SCAG and Caltrans and looking at long-range planning, again, across all spectrums. We're also looking again at developing a opening day scenario for, when the NFL stadium opens, and that transportation management plan for that, what the world looks like without a transit system, a train. We're also going to do a neighborhood protection plan. But today, while we're doing all of that, I tell you that because we're focusing simply today on one key component. That's the transit connector. And that's a train. So what you see with what the slide, I'm sorry, go back one slide. What you see is that we have a lot of exciting things happening. Crenshaw line, as you know, is underway. That's slated to open by 2019. It's going to connect to the Green Line. It's going to connect to the airport. We looked at your bus lines. We understand a lot of the existing bus lines, while they, they serve the city today. Right now, they end at 8 p.m. There's no weekends. They're up every 30 minutes, and so those bus lines can't handle the capacity for major events that we see that are going to come here. So we were looking at how can we deal with this lack of connectivity that we are going to need quickly. So other world-class cities, just like Inglewood, they have transit connecting to major activity centers. And that's what we want to emulate. Metro, because of the mayor's good work and leadership, he requested Metro to study this. And they took on a preliminary study to figure out how the Metro line could connect directly to the NFL stadium. And they looked at that. They looked at a spur line operation coming off of the Crenshaw line from Fairview Heights down to the NFL stadium. They looked at that, and they also compared it to other independent automated people mover or monorail type systems that could also connect to really try to understand what would be feasible. From that study, next slide, they concluded that the venues are going to be major traffic generators. They're highly event-driven, and access to convenient parking near the transit lines during those events will attract a very high ridership. But when they started evaluating the alternatives, that spur line, that single-seat ride off of the Crenshaw line, really does introduce a level of complexity and that they don't believe is necessarily feasible or the most viable solution. It would, there's a high demand, there's the infrastructure upgrades, and there would be a lot of operational changes up and down the Crenshaw line that's why they determined that a more viable option would be an automated people mover. As part of that study, it was revealed that the Measure M expenditure plan and the long-range plan currently doesn't account for funding an Inglewood connector, and that it is incumbent upon us to develop public-private partnerships and activate all other kinds of tools to find the funding to do this. And we know we have leadership that will help us do that. The next slide, please. So I'm going to introduce Sanjeev Shah. Sanjeev Shah is a premier consultant in transportation solutions, and he's helped cities across the country, across the world, develop these systems. And so he's part of a key member of our team.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you. Started as a baseline with the alternatives that Metro had developed. These are the four alternatives. A, which is Market to Manchester coming down Prairie. B is the Fairview Heights, what Lisa mentioned to the spur connection, the single seat ride, if you would. Is coming across from where LAWA or LAX is developing their contract facilities, and the intermodal center coming along Arbor, Vitae. And D is the same thing, but coming along Century Boulevard. Next slide. We'll talk a little bit about the Market Manchester alignment. In the Metro study, they had identified that along Market Street, the technology would be sharing the same right-of-way as the road-based traffic. So as we were looking at it, we started looking at what the city's needs were, where some of the synergy exists within the city, the commercial development, the restaurants, the amenities that exist. And one of the things that we looked at was how can we optimize it, or for lack of a better word, how can we make it more applicable to the city of Inglewood, the needs and the vision. First things that we did with it is, what if we were to take it off the street level, elevate it, so now we have eliminated the conflicts with the road-based traffic. In this particular alignment, as you can see, there's a station that would connect to the Cranshaw line. Then we have another station as it turns off on Manchester. And then we have identified 3 potential stations to serve the key major venues along Prairie. So anticipate about 5 stations. Work is ongoing, and this, again, that adjustment would occur as the coordination takes place. We looked at the street right-of-way. What is the width of the street? And the street along that alignment is sufficiently wide enough that the entire system could be placed within the street right-of-way. Some work is ongoing as to how do we make the turns, how do we fit the needle, thread the needle through it. So some minor property impacts are anticipated associated with it. Next slide, please. Critical aspect of it is, just because we don't see it on the surface, but underground we do have utilities that we need to be mindful of. So one of the things that the team did was they collected the data to try and collect data from the city as well as from the other utility providers to create as much as possible a comprehensive map of the utilities that exist underground within the corridor. So that was basically mapped out, and the key findings are that there are minimal conflicts that could be technically resolved because the roadway right-of-way is wide enough, okay? One of the things that would occur as the leadership defines or selects the defined or the preferred alternative, detailed work would be necessary on there. Some of the solution would be do we have to relocate a utility, or can the columns be placed in a manner so that we can avoid the conflict with the utility? So that would occur as part of the detailed development on the preferred alternative. The next one is a Fairview Heights alignment. This was the one that originally was a spur that was coming off using the same technology that Metro would use. And since they had identified that there was some difficulties or challenges associated with putting that using the same technology, as it would be affecting system-wide operations, I was like, well, let's use the APM, let's just test it out also, and run it elevated coming down on the same alignment. So next slide. Now, as you know, we have some narrow roadway widths as we are coming off of Florence. As we coming down south, we have the park and we have the cemetery, and we have some narrow roadway widths over there. So that provides, or it limits it, and therefore, as a result, we anticipate that there might be some property impacts associated with it, especially as we are trying to determine where the columns and the footers, etc., might go. So there might be some conflicts associated that would have to be resolved. Critical aspect then comes back on the utility side. As we get south of Manchester, on Prairie, it's the same solution that we had for Market Manchester. If we can find a solution there, we find the same solution here. And up north, as we go up north over there, because of the narrow roadway width and the challenges associated with finding public right-of-way, if you would, where we could drop the structure down, there are certain challenges associated with utility relocation. Might be some associated impacts if we have to relocate utilities or find space to drop. The next one is the Arbor Vitae alignment. It's an elevated system. And over here, if you can take a look at it, we're coming east, and then once we get to Prairie, we turn south, and there's also a spur that goes north, because again, the goal was to try and make sure that we have an apples-to-apples comparison of it. So we have to make sure that each and every one of the venues that were being served by the different alternatives are appropriately served over here. Because of that T-junction, it basically drives the need to run 2 routes, one south, one north. So that is a consideration that comes back into play. Arbor Vitae Road is a pretty narrow road, as you all know. And as a result, in trying to place the alignment, while we try to keep the traffic and the lanes and everything operational, both during construction and in the post-construction time frame, we anticipate that there would be some impacts on the properties because of the narrow roadway width. We really don't have the ability to try and thread too thick a needle through a narrow location, if you would. So we anticipate that there would be impacts to the small businesses and or the residences and some potential neighborhood displacement, but that goes back to how the solution is worked. And along utilities, we don't have too many utilities there, but because of the narrow right-of-way and the inability to have the flexibility to play around with it, the corridor is very, very tight. So the ability to resolve utility conflicts or relocations or place columns in a way that we avoid the conflicts is very limited. So So then we get to Century Boulevard, which is similar to Arbor Vitae, but now instead of having a split route, because we're at the south end of it, it turns north, and every single of those venues are being served without having a split operation. The alignment is within the width. Century Boulevard, as you know, is a pretty wide thoroughfare. However, it also carries a lot of utilities, both in the sidewalk, in the center, and so forth, and these are major utilities that DWP and others run. An interesting aspect over here is, while on Arbor Vitae crosses over 405 and would be able to run the alignment over. But at Century, 405, Century goes below 405. So as we are running the alignment through, we have to basically either cross over the 405 or go underneath it. So that's a challenge that we are trying to work out. Utilities, as we talked about, a lot of major utilities. And as a result, and there are quite some utilities also underneath the sidewalks. And this is where typically you would want to place the column so that we are not affecting the roadway lanes. And as a result of that there would be some impacts or might require some acquisitions of property along there based on how the columns are placed, just to make sure that we do not. I just want to add this point to this. Not all utilities are equal. Some utilities are, you might consider them to be major infrastructure utilities that not only serve the local area, but the regional, such as the stormwater lines, the water supply lines, the fire lines, and so forth. So certain utilities are a lot easier to deal with than other utilities, and some major utilities we may not be able to relocate without having basically, just having a much larger work associated with it. I just want to put that caveat out there. Next slide. So, now that you have seen where we are on the four alternatives at a bird's eye level, the next thing basically comes back in, and this ends up becoming a leadership decision, was how do we go ahead and select what is the preferred alternative, if you would. These are suggestions as to what you might consider as you make your decision. First and foremost, we want to make sure, and we've been true to it, is the principle, which is we are connecting all the key venues. And also trying to go ahead and make sure that we try to synergize what the economic or the development or the amenities that the city might be able to provide venues. Issues were, we want to make sure that the alternatives are compatible and fit within the site-specific constraints. Kind of talk to that, and that's regional development, right-of-way, acquisitions required, utilities and conflicts, how readily are they resolvable, if you would. Nothing is impossible. Some things just cost a heck of a lot more than other things. Existing and proposed infrastructure projects, again, being, maintaining fidelity to what are the other development plans within the city and making sure that we do tie into the synergy associated with it. And last but not least is you're making a capital investment. What is the cost and the benefit associated with it? What is the ridership potential coming out of each one of these alternatives, if you would? What are the costs? It's not just the capital cost, but also the operations and maintenance costs, i.e. total cost of ownership, if you would. Opportunities to revitalize a historic downtown. Synergy with the regional development, and obviously the ability to meet the goals and the objectives. These are some of the summary of the four different alternatives we talked about. The length of the system market is about 1.8 miles. Compared to Arbor Vitae and Century, which is about 3 miles, if you would. The ridership modeling work is ongoing by the team, but preliminary indications are that regardless of the alternative, the ridership projection, event-based, etc., is going to be within 15% of each other. 1.5. The right-of-way impacts on market are minimal, and they start becoming more significant as we go to the right. The utility conflicts on the Market Street, Manchester alignment are minimal, good ability to resolve, while on the others, while they may be minimal, but the ability to resolve without affecting property takes or something like that. The required coordination market is basically coordinate with Metro, because we need to tie in with them and make sure that we tie back in and we have a robust intermodal connectivity. Same thing on Fairview Heights. On the Arbor Vitae and the Century, need to have coordination in addition to Metro with also LAWA, because they have the development taking place over there. It should all be integrated, if you would. and then also with Caltrans for the I-405 crossing. Estimated cost per rider, again, and this is just a estimate at this point in time. The numbers are being developed. Market rate provides you with the best cost per rider. Think about it. If your ridership is about the same, but in one, the length is two-thirds what it is in the other one, your cost per rider goes down because your costs are going to be lower. And then you factor back into it what are the additional costs that may come back in relative to utility relocations as well as property takes and so forth. That's how you see that going up. And then the last but not least was basically your vision that you want to go ahead and make sure that there's synergy. Investments that are being made do provide synergy within the city. Market Street provides you the biggest amount of synergy within the city of Inglewood, while the other alternatives provide you with some limited opportunity. They do provide you, but with limited. So that was one part of it. Now, what is the right technology to apply to it? The universe of technologies, small to large. PRTs, personal rapid transits, you all must have heard about them too. Smaller vehicles that carry 4 to 6 passengers, and they're typically kind of like origin destination, on-demand type service. We see them today on the streets with a driver. They're called Uber and Lyft, okay, for lack of a better word. Then on the extreme side, we have the urban or the metro rail type vehicles. Major metro cities have them running. These are typically your work to ride and regional transportation network systems, 20, 30 miles long, apart. And they basically are used for line haul systems. As you can see, and then have the light rail vehicles or the streetcars that basically share, and light rail vehicles are not lighter in weight than urban metro. They weigh about the same. The reason they're called light rail is because they share the same right-of-way as other road-based traffic. So it is, you're drinking real Coca-Cola or Coca Light, less calories if you would. That's what it is. It has nothing to do with the weight. And then somewhere in the middle, you have a class of technologies which are generically known as automated people movers. Driverless because they're automated, because they're driverless, and they move people. And within it, you have classes that include the monorail as well as dual wheel axle type systems, or the other types of systems. And within that, there are two different ways that they could be propelled. One is a cable propelled, think of a horizontal elevator if you would. And then you have self-propelled where they have motors on board, or you might have motors directly on the track that basically allows it to be pulled. So the key challenge over here is making sure that for the right alternative, we have basically a network within the city where we want to go ahead and connect everything. One of the things that APMs have been applied to in the past successfully, including in downtown circulator type systems in Miami and Detroit, Singapore and Dubai, other places, is it basically allows you to have stations which are anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 feet apart. Trains can operate as close as 90 seconds apart, and in essence gives you the ability to connect discrete facilities and tie them back all together to give the people who are using it a feeling or a perception that it is one unified campus, if you would. That said, went and did, this is a very high-level evaluation as to how these different type of technologies might potentially fit within what some of the criteria are. Ability to fit within the site constraints and geometry, the scope and scale, the ability to meet the projected line capacity, flexibility in the train operations, and as you can see at the end of it, a preliminary finding is that large monorails, self-propelled, automated people mover systems, which could be rubber tired or steel wheel, are viable technologies to apply to the Inglewood connector system. Now, one thing to remember also is that these technologies are proprietary, and it's important that as this project moves to the next stage under your leadership, to make sure that the project requirements are developed in a manner that levels the playing field, because different suppliers have different requirements, so you level the playing field, and this way, best solution to the benefit of the city. At this point, I'd like to turn over to Lisa. Thank you.
So We have a tremendous amount of work underway, and at every step of the process, we will be working with the city to have them know, the status of our progress. First of all, we're going to finalize this techno-economic assessment to help frame this for you so you can select a preferred alternative. I think we've started on that road. We're going to then, once you select the alignment that you think is the best one to go for, then we're going to work on developing that further so that we have a really robust project description. Because it's not just about the stations and the alignment, but it's also looking at intermodal facility opportunities. It's looking at the maintenance facility. It's really developing up what exactly that would look like, even from a sustainability perspective. Once we have landed on a project description, we can also then work in simultaneous paths. We're going to work on the CEQA environmental clearance. We're going to start that. We're also going to work on a funding strategy, and then we're also going to define the project development and delivery strategy, all the while continuing robust stakeholder outreach. On the work operating in parallel, we want to make sure we bring to you a fully integrated solution that is holistic. And this work, remind you, is not going to be done at the expense of the other work we have to do. Neighborhood protection plans, multimodal, long range, opening day. The project development and delivery strategy is going to help you decide, make decisions on affordability. A public-private partnership is really not free money. There is a financial backstop, and so we need to really understand how we can monetize the benefits against the cost and inform the return on investment type considerations. Our project delivery strategy, we're going to look at how we can identify opportunities that provide optimized delivery, getting this program on time, on budget, optimize the total cost of ownership with risks retained by parties best able to mitigate and manage those risks. And once these preliminary strategies are defined, this is going to be the starting point to initiate a detailed financial and legal structuring to delivering the preferred plan. So we have a lot of work to do. We really appreciate your time, and we thank the mayor again for his leadership here.
There going to be a workshop or something?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Lisa, Sanjay. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Okay. Public comment. Anyone that wants to talk about anything related to city business not covered on the agenda may do so at this time.
Malcolm, thank you, Mayor and Council. Just adding on to the report that was just made, just a comment, observation. I don't think there's a day goes by that we don't hear comments about housing issues, and transportation and housing really goes together. So I think the council will be looking at ways with this transportation, having density bonuses along transportation corridors and things that would really work out well. And just to say, the city of Inglewood has really been very proactive in your housing programs. From the housing report that was just done, indicated the amount of housing and development, and also did a study over increase over that time. So I think Inglewood is one of those cities, and the Housing HUD had just released a report that there's 44 states that have banned rent control from their jurisdiction because they've discovered the fact that the lesson it has on impact. And even in the unincorporated area of Los Angeles, the county had interjected a rent control in 1985, and a few years after that, they disbanded that because they saw how it decreased the amount of development that was taking place in that. And so when you look at all the development that's taken on in Inglewood right now, and with the transportation possibilities, I think the city has been very proactive, and I think you should keep up the good work that you're doing on that, and Inglewood is just going to be the place to be. Thank you.
Parker Jr., Vietnam veteran, 66, 67, conscious objector. All this talk about development, if live here in Inglewood, you see all up and down the street the changing demographics.
Demographics.
Thank you, Mayor. Man, you're on my side for one. Anyway, the people that live here, you can see it changing. I mean, it's changed already. Black people are being moved out in eviction cases with trumped-up evidence and everything else, and the courts are all in it. We had a major source of income in Inglewood for years, which is that veterans thing, but the government won't pay us our money. You're going to these big corporations and developers, changing and putting everyday people in the street. You read the homeless numbers, it's going through the rest. These are people that never thought they'd be homeless. The people that came here and lived here, a lot of them. Well, I'm sorry to say it. He let the other man talk a few seconds.
Give him a second. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Anyway.
10 seconds.
You cannot have anything without the people. I don't care how many corporate people you bring in and these greedy collaborators and politicians like you.
Okay.
You cannot have anything about
We're
the
at
people.
time now, Mr. Parker.
It's not about national security, it's about the people, the Constitution.
Thank you. Parker. Thank you, Mr. Parker. No, if you keep talking, I will. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not keep talking, 'cause I got a lot.
Okay, put him out. Parker, it's time to go. All right. Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Zambrano.
My name is Diane Sombrano, and I hope everybody noticed that the person previously got to talk long past the red blinking lights, and Mr. Parker couldn't even get to the red blinking lights before the police officer approached. So just want to put that on record. As we talk about transportation equities, I hope we don't go ahead with Agenda 21 issues and Senate Bill 827 and do the stack in packs. That's abhorrent and disgusting. I hope at some point, at least maybe, one or two of you remember that you're supposed to be serving the residents of this community, the ones who are currently present, that you walked around and asked to vote for you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, and City staff. I will remind everybody that Mr. Parker talks about the same thing every week. Comes up here and gets aggressive. When Mr. Parker started first, he was interesting to listen to, but now he's gotten more aggressive. So my thing with Mr. Parker now is we must ban him from these meetings.
Ooh,
If we kick him out, do not let him come back upstairs.
I'm about to swoon.
Okay? Now, if you have a problem with security, I'll do it.
No, that's okay, Mr. Bailey. We got this.
But Mr. Parker has to learn that this is a free society. You can say what you want to, but you can't say it in an aggressive manner. Okay? These are my comments. Mr. Parker, please control yourself. I'm getting tired of getting you kicked out of here. Let's all try to be human and learn to live with some kind of laws and rules. Those are my comments. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you.
A very interesting presentation, very good presentation, I thought, and concise, and it really covers a lot of problems that we're going to foresee in the future. I'd like to thank our guests for coming in and explaining that to us, and it answers a lot of problems that we're facing even right now and doing what we need to do in the Traffic Commission. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Well, Bill Widener, and that presentation was good. I support the idea more than the others of going from our Market Street all the way over to the Green Line and moving up, because that's going to more people. There's traffic on the streets because it's above on a like a lot better than
Thank you. Okay, we'll close public comment. Are there any council comments?
like to compliment thing to do with this transportation seminar they gave us today. It was really enlightening, and it just shows you that Inglewood is thinking ahead of the group. In other words, we're trying to get ahead of these problems before they ever come. So moving people is going to be our biggest problem, and I think we've solved that with this transportation thing. I don't want to do this before I forget. I'm thinking about this. I want everyone to know, since Mr. Brown asked everybody to notice, that the mayor didn't give the gentleman much time. He did. He actually asked the officer to wait and let him finish, and let he gave him 6 or 10 more seconds. So let's not forget that either. The other thing is, I want to also compliment the Public Works Department on requests that I've made to them, how quickly they took care of it, and I want to thank you for doing that, because one of these things were a safety hazard. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your cooperation. And to everyone here, thanks for coming, and have a great week.
Thank you, Councilman Padilla. Thank you, Councilman Dodson.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of comments. Had an opportunity this week to attend several events. One of them was last week on this week on this past Monday was Read Across America over at La Tijera Charter School. So it was really good to be there with the students at the school, to read with them, and just to mingle with the crowd. As I said, you know, our school children are very bright. Looking at some of the books that they wanted to read, I got to tell you, we're in good hands. So I want to thank La Tijera Charter School for allowing me to be a part of their Read Across America Day. Also on Saturday, had an opportunity to celebrate a one-year anniversary for Droby Stogies, which is located in the 1300 block of North La Brea. Really great event. So congratulations to Ryan and Jakeem on their one-year anniversary. Saturday night, my wife Stella and I had a great evening over at the Miracle Theater. If you haven't been there for an event, you owe it to yourself. Matter of fact, Saturday night there is going to be another event there, and I'm drawing a blank on, it's a reading event, and I'm drawing a blank on it. But we had a chance to go to the Celebrate Soul tour, and in essence, it was like going to a doo-wop concert, and right here in our backyard. And so it was just a really fun event, a lot of community participation out there. I mean, again, right here in Inglewood, this is something you would have before would had to go to Cerritos or down to some other places in LA, but instead it was right here in our backyard in Inglewood. So thank you to Owen Smith for putting together a great event. The plan that was just presented, transportation management plan regarding the last mile, a lot of information. So if you have, if you get a chance to get home and pull it up on your cable TV, because it'll be shown there again and again, you owe it to yourself to sit down and see that presentation again, so you can really understand everything that the city is looking to do to make sure that last mile is something that we're going to be proud of, something that's going to help us move people from one place to the other. And so a lot of hard work has gone into this. Director Atwell, thank you for you and your folks for putting that presentation together. Very well done. A lot of effort, as you can see, evident in that presentation. So do your homework, go back, take a look at it, because I can tell you the rest of us here on the dais will be doing the same thing as we sit down and discuss and take a look at the alternatives that have been presented. With that, Mayor, I'd like to ask you to close in the memory of one of my volunteers. Her husband died. My volunteer is Angie Carrier, and her husband Jerome passed away yesterday. So Mayor, if you can close in his honor, I would really appreciate that. With that, everybody enjoy the rest of your week.
Councilman Franklin, District 4.
Yes, I certainly want to thank Lisa Tripoletti and the Transitory Development presentation. Clearly, I like the options for us to weigh in on when we're using the theme of connecting people, places, and the future. I think it's great. Also, in that same concept, I want to reach out to Chris Robert and her consulting group, who also has worked with a number of the council members to engage the community to be able to get that participation as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize Connie Turner from Southern California Edison's here, who keeps me posted on the various lane closures, power outages, any kind of challenges that we may deal involving Southern California Edison. She truly is an asset for the behalf of the city. And then finally, Mayor, I'd ask that you close the meeting in honor of Mr. Anthony Oren, O-R-E-N, Maxwell. He's a longtime resident of the city of Inglewood, and unfortunately, he was involved in a vehicle accident in San Bernardino, and his life was taken. And on that note, have a blessed one. Thank you.
Councilman Morales, District 3.
Just a couple of brief comments on some of the same thing. Thank you very much for the presentation. We're very fortunate, actually, to have the ability to have that type of study. You know, not every city can spend that kind of money. Of course, it helped that the mayor's on the MTA board, and that helped us out quite a bit. But that's what it means. Everything that's happening in Inglewood means we're on the spotlight. The mayor gets to be on the MTA board and have the leverage it takes to bring that type of study here. Those are the kind of benefits that we're seeing that it's difficult to point at and say, hey, we're growing, we're moving forward, this is what's happening, all positive, but that's what it means. That's a great thing. It's a study. You know, the engineers, the professionals that we saw did a great job. They bring us options. We discuss them, and our job is to balance, you know, the best thing for our city as a whole, our residents, and the best thing to make us succeed in everything we got going. So we look forward to taking a look at that, as well as some of the options we may have. I want to thank some of the schools that have been inviting us for the Black History Month last month, in terms of what the children did to kind of educate themselves, which is always amazing in terms of when they are dealing with different cultures, and to see the intelligence that they bring to the table on their own. It's a beautiful thing, and we're very fortunate to have such a diverse city here. That's all I have, Mayor, but if you can close in memory of an aunt, my wife's aunt, who passed away, made Inglewood her home the last 30 years. Her name is Taeko, T-A-E-K-O, Velasco. Thank you very much.
Taeko.
Taeko.
Velasquez.
Velasquez. Hyphen.
Kinoshita. Common spelling, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very common.
You're killing me, Morales. You're killing me. I wanted to really thank Norm Emerson, Chris, Robert, Lisa Tripoletti, and Sanji, and Louis Atwell. This is that presentation that you saw. The average city will never, ever receive such a presentation. When all is said and done, we'll have spent $300,000 on this study on how we're going to connect the rail line to our entertainment district. That $300,000 was provided by LA Metro. I went to the SCAG meeting, Southern California Association of Governments, meeting after my Metro meeting last week. They asked me to stop by and speak. And I had never been there. It's a 6-county consortium, over 80 members. They were at the Intercontinental Hotel in the most beautiful conference room I'd ever seen. I thought I was walking into the United Nations. That beautiful. And to show you how the persona of Inglewood has changed. So first of all, not only have we never been invited to speak, isn't that right, guys?
Right. We still have.
It's the royal we. And I just thought I was coming to a meeting. They introduced me. They stopped the meeting. 80 people on the board on this huge 80-foot long norm and room and an audience, and they said, oh, we have a celebrity here. We have the mayor from Inglewood, and we just hope he would spend a few minutes and tell us about what they're doing there. And they applauded. We are now a celebrity. and it reminds me, another meeting I went to when they introduced myself, the mayor from West Hollywood, Culver City, Santa Monica, and myself. After they introduced us, and they said, these are all prominent mayors from the West Side. So, so everybody wants to be part of Inglewood and Inglewood to be part of them. It's a beautiful thing. And so for us to be able to do a study like this at no cost to us and figure out how we're going to do this, it just shows you how far we've come. And before I close the meeting in honor of all these distinguished people, what we're doing over the next 10 years, when you include the capital expenses of construction and all those jobs that they produce, and the economic impact of the businesses that will operate here, tax revenues that will be generated, and the property taxes that will be generated. Conservatively, over the next 10 years, $15 billion will be centered here in the city of Inglewood. Now, please understand this. We've done this with no money down. And also understand the people that are used to having money centered where they are, they don't want this to happen. Money and power are things men seldom give up without a fight. So when you're going to hear about lawsuits, and I'll tell you that I'm a pretty smart guy, but I never heard a multi-billion-dollar company use the word tricked when they have $1,000 an hour attorneys. I haven't ever heard that. I'm a smart guy, but not that smart. So don't believe everything in a press release, and remember this about a lawsuit pleading. A lawsuit pleading is something an attorney writes that they hope, it's a dream that they hope everybody will buy that version of it. No one's been under oath. No facts have been presented. Just write something. And here's the bottom line. We're not going to stay in our place here. We have a seat at the table. And we're going to stay at the table. And we have the right to self-determination. That's all I have to say about that. I want to close the meeting in the name of Taeko Velasquez Kinoshida. See, I told you it's common spelling. Marvin Bailey. Marlene Bailey. Anthony Orrin Maxwell. And Jerome Guerre. And we're adjourned.